everybody. It's just gone 1 o'clock on a Friday. It feels a bit strange doing a planning meeting on a Friday, but here we go. Welcome to today's Strategic Planning Committee. We'll just go through bits of the agenda at the front. If I can remind you to switch mobile phones off or put them onto silent. Membership of the committee. I'll start with Councillor Mather.
Councillor Mather substituting for Councillor Paul Kane.
Mohan? Yeah. You're cuddled today, aren't you?
It's okay. I'll
Rest.
Councillor Walker.
Councillor Bellamy as Councillor Bellamy, and I'm myself today as well. 2 minutes of previous meeting, can we pass them as a correct record? Thank you. Item 3, interest and lobbying. I'll start with Councillor Mather. None. Councillor Sokol?
None, Chair.
Councillor Walker?
Page 8996. I have had some discussion with the business, but that's going back about a year ago when they were first developing things. I haven't actually spoken to them about this particular application.
Right. Councillor Pinnock?
Item 11, Chair, the letter from the HSE.
Yeah. Councillor Firth? Councillor Bellamy?
Item 11, the letter from the HSC, and page 89, I've been lobbied by the business, but no action taken.
And I've got page 73, lobbied, no action taken, and page 11, which is the HSE, same as quite a few of the others. Item 4, admission to the public. This is a public meeting. It is recorded, so no shouting, swearing, that kind of stuff. Item 5, deputations and petitions. None. Item 6, public questions. None. Right, we carried out site visits this morning. We had 3 site visits on the same site at St Luke's at Hospital, Crossland Moor, and then we went over to King James School at Almonbury. Now we move on to the first application. This is item 11. This is the application which we did do a site visit on a month or 2 ago. This is Bankwood Way at Birstall. David.
Thank you, Chair. I'm David Wordsworth. Case Officer Bill Toppin is on leave today. This is an outline application for just over 14,500 square metres of retail floor space, use class A1, that was presented to Strategic Committee on the 22nd of November 2018. This is on a site of 3.2 hectares in size, located on the corner of Bankwood Way and Gelderd Road at Junction 27 Retail Park in Birstall. Access was the only matter applied for. All other matters are reserved. An indicative layout plan that was submitted with the application illustrates a terrace block of 8 retail units varying in size. Access is to be taken off Bankwood Way to the north. Car parking provision is shown at 453 spaces. The applicant state that the development would generate in the area of approximately 300 jobs. The site is unallocated within the UDP and it is a priority employment area in the emerging local plan. In terms of retail policy, so to remind the committee that this proposal is classed as an out-of-centre location. National policy requires sequential tests and impact testing to be undertaken, and the applicants submitted significant details to comply with those requirements. This process was undertaken. The Council were advised by retail consultants WYG. Trade diversions from existing centres such as Dewsbury and Batley have been projected. The assessment concluded these would not be significantly adverse upon these centres. As part of this proposal, improvements to the pedestrian facilities on the vicinity of the site were to be upgraded and improved for the adjacent retail park. This is to be secured through Section 106 agreement. A key element of this item is considering the consultation responses received. Members will see in the update that was circulated that the Secretary of State has declined to call this application in for determination. Also of note is that Highways England removed their initial objection. These are a couple of images, photo montages shown of the proposed retail store. Members will be aware that following referral of the application to the Health and Safety Executive for consideration, they responded with a letter dated 28th of January 19, raising several issues. Health and Safety Executive stated that the proposal gives rise to exceptional concern as there are public safety issues at stake. Increasing the number of people, both working and the public, increases public attending the retail park, increases the risk to human health, loss of life and harm to people. The tenants' distribution limited operation on the adjacent site is subject to the control of Major Accident Hazards Regulations 2015, abbreviated as COMAR. Due to substances at the site, hazardous substances consent was granted, I think, 1992. HSE brought to the Council's attention that errors were made in the committee report, and these have now been corrected in the report that is before you. National guidance has now been amended also within the report, and the majority of the site is within the inner zone. This is an image that the technical team in planning have put together to demonstrate to you. It isn't 100% accurate, but it is representative of the rings and the zones. The first zone is the inner zone, the green zone is the medium zone, and then you have the outer zone that is shaded in blue. The majority of the site is within the inner zone. The rest is within the medium zone, or the middle zone. The majority of the existing retail park is within the middle and outer zones, as you can see. The M62 corridor and large residential areas to the south and the west are in the outer zone. The third element that was brought to our attention is that the Council failed to consult HSE on a previous application within one of the COMAR zones in 2015, and this was for a retail unit. The committee report before you has therefore been redrafted to take into account these points that were raised, and the HSE officers have been invited to attend this committee, and I believe they are speaking. That's all for now, Chair. Thank you.
First speaker we have is Andrew Mitchell. If you could come down to this chair down here on front corner.
Not done this before.
Andrew Mitchell, I'm Managing Director of Tenants Distribution Limited. The company was founded in 1797 and has a network of distribution centres. The Birstall site is a very important part of that centre. We actually have a few coma sites, and to be fair, without the network of the Leeds, or the Birstall site, as we call it, it would be very difficult to retain that the network intact. I'm here to support the HSC's objection to this planning.
Next up, we've got Richard Heaton from the HSE.
Okay, thank you, Mr Chairman and members, for the opportunity to explain HSE's advice for the proposed new retail park at Gelder Road, Banquard Way. I'm Richard Heaton. I'm a specialist inspector within the Health and Safety Executive who look at predictive risk assessment. My colleague, Mr Eddie Moore, is the regulatory inspector for the tenants' distribution side. Thank you also for agreeing for this case to be brought before your planning committee for a second time. HSE rarely asks to address a planning committee, and when we do, it's because the proposed development poses a serious risk to the public. I do hope you've all had the opportunity to read the formal letter which I sent through yesterday, and I will be making use of a little bundle of slides as I go through. Tenants Distribution Limited on Gelder Road is one of a large number of chemical distribution sites across Great Britain that have hazardous substances consent. It's a form of planning permission to store significant quantities of hazardous substances. Kirklees Council is the ultimate hazardous substance authority, issuing the hazardous substances consent and consulting HSE as the government's nationally appointed safety advisor. The Land Use Planning Policy Advisory role is outlined in the National Planning Practice Guidance. It's noted that Kirklees have not saved a Unitary Development Plan Policy EP 28, which addresses significant numbers of people in the vicinity of a major hazard site, because the issue it addresses is a matter for HSE. This appears to be putting planning decisions regarding public safety in the hands of HSE. HSE has the role of statutory consultee and can only advise Kirklees on public safety. Kirklees is the ultimate decision maker. Tenants Distribution Limited is a chemicals distributor with over 800 stock lines stored within the warehouse, many of which are highly toxic in nature. The site also has an external tank farm for the bulk storage of hazardous substances, which includes hydrogen peroxide, a potentially explosive substance, and outdoor storage for movable containers. They also have filling and dilution facilities within the external tank farm used to make products for farm, food and pharmaceutical use. If I just draw your attention to the first picture there, which puts into context the proposed development and the different aspects of the tenant side. You can see that at the closest point, the external tank farm where chemicals are stored is approximately 35 metres from the indicated location of the retail units, with the warehouse only a further 10 minutes away. The site is, of course, subject to stringent health and safety legislation, specifically the control of major accident hazards regulations, and HSE, as the regulator, ensures they have suitable and sufficient risk control measures. The risk has already been reduced to as low as is reasonably practicable. History and common sense tell us that all risk cannot be eliminated. There is always a residual risk. That's the risk that unavoidably remains after all legally required measures have been taken to prevent and mitigate the effects of a major accident. Things can and do go wrong, example being the 2005 Buncefield fuel depot explosion in Hemel Hempstead. Just to draw attention to the second picture, that illustrates just what the devastating power such major accidents can have. It's HSE's role to assess this residual risk of major accidents, provide consultation zones to the planning authority, which in turn enables suitable consultation. And that's the what we call the three-zone map that can be seen on the third drawing there. At the proposed development close to the tenant site, the risks are very high, and dominated by the effects of a warehouse fire involving the highly toxic substances being stored. As the toxic smoke plume cools, it can fall to the ground and affect large numbers of people at the proposed development. So on to the next slide there just shows two examples of drifting toxic smoke plumes. The first in the upper left is a Corrie Brothers. There is a warehouse in the background there, which just shows the nasty-looking smoke plumes that can drift around. The risks are added to by the bulk storage of hydrogen peroxide. If contaminated, the resulting reaction could cause an explosion, and if present, a large number of members of the public within the retail units could be killed. And just moving on to the next slide there, just shows the damaging effects of overpressure. Information from regulatory colleagues suggests that the hazardous substances consent at tenants is being fully utilised, and so the consultation zones are representative of the current risks. Though, of course, hazardous substances consent allows the maximum amount of hazardous substances to be stored at any time. Most of the proposed development lies within the inner zone. That's the zone of highest risk. Ideally, separation would mean that all off-site populations would be unaffected whatever accident occurs at a major hazard site, but HSE is mindful of the need to use the land for some beneficial purpose. To that extent, HSE's policy for the inner zone is to not advise against small manufacturing units and the like, where the risk to able-bodied people of working age from major accidents is low compared to the risks from general work activity. Members of the public will be most at present in small numbers and often for only a short time in any day. More generally, HSE's advice reflects society's expectation that members of the public, ranging from the very young to the elderly, and who are not aware of the risks, are afforded greater protection. The nature of the development implies that there will be large numbers, greater than 500, of the general public present for a significant portion of time. Of course, this includes the very young and the elderly. Members of the public will not be rehearsed in evacuation procedures should a major incident occur at the tenant's site, and given the presence of vulnerable and sensitive groups, evacuation will be more difficult, meaning the consequences will be more severe. Kirklees Council is proposing a move towards placing a greater number of people, many of which will be the very young or the elderly, at a high level of risk. HSE is often asked about other mitigation measures, such as emergency evacuation, additional fire protection and controlling occupancy. However, HSE's advice assumes these will already be in place and tested as part of the emergency plan. When advice is obtained by HSE's Land Use Planning web app, HSE can only provide advice on that part of that development for which advice is being sought. Local planning authorities also need to take into account the total number of people that are present in the consultation zones, particularly the inner and middle zones. In the case of encroachment, the risks can increase as well as the number of people. Cumulative development leads to an increase in population with each successive development over time. Kirklees Council are the only authority who balance the numbers of people at risk through development control around the tenant's site. So when considering public safety and planning decisions, they should take into account the total number that are present, particularly in the higher risk inner and middle zones, since consent was granted. Just to conclude, the combination of the likelihood of an incident occurring at the tenant's site, together with the potential consequences of large numbers of the public being present, means this case is of exceptional concern. The Strategic Planning Committee should consider the increase in the number of people at risk since the deemed consent was granted in 1992. Please be aware that Government's National Planning Practice Guidance affords HSE a period of time within which to consider requesting the Secretary of State call in the application. Requesting the Secretary of State to call in the application is a very exceptional course of action for HSE. So you decided to reconsider the decision in the light of a fuller understanding of the public safety risks. I hope my summary this afternoon has helped clarify the seriousness of our concerns and to allow us to explain and answer questions on the serious safety risks should the development go ahead. Thank you.
Right, Richard, thank you. It's all right, yeah. Jonathan, next. You've only got 3 minutes, Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. I'm Jonathan Ainley, speaking on behalf of the applicant, Ogden Estates. Whilst we're very pleased that members unanimously supported the proposal back in November, we acknowledge the importance of the HSE response and the need for matters to be very carefully considered. In our view, the situation in HSE's position has actually remained unchanged from the November committee when members undertook their site visit, i.e. HSE maintained their objection. That position was reported in November, including the committee report, which was before members, and therefore we believe that both officers and members understood the HSE position when a decision was taken. Notwithstanding this, there are a number of further points we'd like members to consider in the planning balance in respect to the tenant site and our proposals. We understand HSE divides coma establishments such as tenants into 2 categories, upper tier and lower tier, depending upon the quantity of materials stored. Upper tier establishments hold greater quantities and subject to additional requirements by the regulations. Tenancy is classified as lower tier. Members may also note the suitability of this area for employment uses, including this specific site, given that it benefits from a priority employment allocation and emerging local plan, which is due for adoption on the 27th of February. The Inspector would have been aware of the zone when supporting this employment allocation. Our proposed use is employment generating, and it therefore follows that it is also in accordance with the allocation as confirmed in the committee report, and clearly the Inspector did not intend the site to be sterilised from development. In fact, there are already 40 to 50 people present on site. Additionally, within the same zone, there are a number of existing businesses which no doubt employ large numbers of people. This includes Screwfix, Daisy Group, Spiral Tech, a hand car wash and garage, along with the Pheasant Pub. DW Sports retail unit is also partially located in the same zone. Our proposal is in outline form, with approval of layout not sought, and therefore we are seeking to establish the principle developed and the means of access only. The reserved matter stage would offer the opportunity for engagement with HSE and formation of a detailed site layout. I'd also draw members' attention to the HSE's public information guidance on coma sites, which states, "You may take reassurance from the fact that many coma establishments have existed for a number of years and their operators understand the requirements placed on them to operate safely." We understand, as you've heard, tenants have operated here since at least 1992. The Secretary of State had the opportunity for call-in, as you've also heard, but considering the merits, confirmed in mid-January that they did not wish to do so, as in their view, the application does not involve issues of more than local importance. If members choose to again support the proposals, it remains within the remit of HSE to request that application is called in. Taking all this into account, given the positive officer recommendation, we hope that members, as they did in November, balance all the material considerations before them and continue to support the proposals on the basis of the significant positive benefits in terms of job creation, economic investment and visual amenity. Thank you, Chair.
Members, it's over to you. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I think initially I did support this at the this application at the meeting in November, and I think it is really important that as a strategic planning committee we do look to support economic development within Kirklees. But given the seriousness of the advice from the HSE, that this is really making me rethink my position. I think given the advice that this presents a serious risk, we have to think about our duty to the citizens of Kirklees and beyond who may be using that site. I think ultimately the safety of people, protecting the lives of people has got to be the utmost consideration when we're making decisions. Thank you, Chair.
Mohan.
Yes, Chair. I understand health and safety have some concern with regard to the safety of this site, yeah? And they shown some pictures on here. But the issue is health and safety requested to the Secretary of State to call in. What the Secretary of State must look into there, and they refused to take their request to call in this one. So they leave it to this committee. Yeah. So they got expert there as well. They don't turn down for nothing. Yeah. So I think this side, there are already business there who are running there. There was no issue. They have any problem to run those business there. Yeah. So I think if we go along to approve this application, we have the chance to get an investment in the area, because the Kirklees Council already lagging behind than other authorities. So we need some investment. This scheme will create some jobs and bring in some other investment. And I've seen in the report, the ward councillors, all the 3 ward councillors are in favor of this scheme. So I think, because I would go along with the recommendation officers. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to clarify something in terms of calling powers for members. Because of the amount of retail, it was referred to, the application was referred to the Secretary of State, and he has responded that he wouldn't call this application in. But in terms of the Health and Safety Executive, if members were to approve this application, it would then be, or minded to approve, it would then be referred again to the Health and Safety Executive, and the Secretary of State could have calling powers there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I think we have to be very concerned about this. I can't remember how I voted at the last meeting, but I know I did make some comments about the growth of retail uses on this whole site, which I described as an accidental retail park, which is effectively what it is. I don't know that we considered sufficiently the relation of this site to the obviously hazardous site next to it last time. But I'm grateful that we've got this opportunity to look at the issues which were very clearly given to us by Mr. Heaton. It was a very clear points that he was making. One of the most crucial points he made was that if this was an application for a number or single manufacturing unit, then the people who work there would be well versed in evacuation procedures and so on. Because we are talking about a retail site, yes, there will be employees there, but there will also be large numbers of members of the public. And although, yes, there are retail sites in the same area within the middle zone, this is quite clearly in the inner zone and also right next door to the hazardous site. So I personally would be very much against granting permission, regardless of the way I voted last time, because as I say, I can't remember. But I know I had doubts about it, that I do remember. And I think that we need to think again very carefully about what we do on this site, because I think we've had an issue raised with us that calls the whole thing, it seems to me, into question.
Thank you, Chair. When this came before, I I do remember how I voted, and I actually supported it. However, listening to what Health and Safety Executive have said and reading their letter and listening to it, I've been in a position where there is a chemical place in our ward, and I've seen the devastation that causes when there's a fire. And believe it or not, that was a lower tier coma site as well. So I noted that the applicants have said that it's down to the operators to make sure it's safe. Well, not all operators are great, and I understand that. And I'm not saying HSE are great at always checking to make sure that everything's perfectly safe, neither in these places. This has brought some real concerns now to me, because if we're expecting to put a retail place up there where there's going to be numerous members of the public that aren't going to know what that site next to it is, that now really, really does concern me. So I'm a bit with Councillor Pinnock on this, and I think we really do need to think about this again.
Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I recall it coming here in November, but I don't recall as much emphasis laid on the toxicity and everything else and danger that there is today. And I think when Mr Heaton, who was the Specialist Inspector of Major Hazards Risk Assessment Unit, when he bothers to send us a letter explaining how bad it could be if things went wrong, then I'm inclined to agree with him. Because he wouldn't send that if he didn't think that it was a situation where it needed to be sent. We've had lots of things where other planning applications where there has been mention of this could happen and that could happen. Fine, but here we're right in the middle of a retail setup. It's not just purely and simply somebody building a property there and just work people going. You've got the general public going as well. So what happens if this did happen? He's bothered to send pictures as well. I bothered to print off this 7-page document, and it does make really good reading. And I've just ring one of the things on it, and it says here, and I quote: Kirklees Council is proposing a move towards placing a great number of people, many of which will be very young or elderly, at higher level of risk. Now, when I read something like that, I start to back off, and that's how I feel now. I don't feel that I could support this, because if anything did happen, I wouldn't want my name mentioned to it, to say I'd supported it, because one never knows. These pictures here, when these blew up, nobody knew they were going to do, did they? Else they wouldn't have done it. So that's the way I feel anyway. Thank you, Chair.
I think it's changed a little bit since we had it first time, after reading all this. Is anybody wanting to propose? Andrew?
Can I propose that I was going to say, can I propose that we refuse it? And I need to just check exactly what grounds we would use for that refusal. Is it sufficient in planning terms to say that because of the advice given by the Health and Safety Executive, we consider that this site and the nature of the site, nature of the proposal, is in a much too dangerous location?
I think it is possible, Councillor Pinnock, based on introducing the number of people at a higher risk than it is currently. It is possible for the council to word something around that. Well, I might suggest that you might consider deferring it to allow officers and legal to discuss and come back with, let's say, more considered reasons for refusal with policies. However, your initial question, yes, it is possible.
I'm sitting here thinking about the presentation and also in my ward having Syngenta on Leeds Road, high density travel, high density in terms of residential area. We have, it's a chemical concern. We already have a very large residential area which incorporates these kinds of hazards. I am minded, based on reading this report, hearing the presentation, going with the recommendation of delegating it to the head of strategic investment to look into this further and bring it back to the committee.
Chair, I would like to ask the question to the officer. The fact that we know this land is dangerous, toxic or whatever now, very dangerous, is there any chance of whoever owns it making it safe? They don't support it, but it'd have to be made safe. I don't go along because Syngenta down the road, that could happen, that may not happen. I wouldn't want to live anywhere near with a danger in something like this lot happening here, as these pictures have been sent. And as I've just said, when the head of HSE bothers to write to us all, then I think we need to take notice. I'm taking notice. Everybody else can do what they want, but I'm taking notice because I'm worried that something could happen and I wouldn't want my name to be signed to it. If they can make it safe, 100% safe, I will vote for it. But until that happens, sorry.
Okay. I think it sits quite clearly, doesn't it, between the economic benefits arising from a very large development with all the prosperity that comes with that and the ambition and the desire for that versus what you've heard today, what you've got in your updated report and the risk associated with that. The fact is you've got an outline planning application, so you haven't got fixed details, but you have got an understanding about the nature of how many people will be coming, their unfamiliarity with their environment that they're coming into, and therefore the risk. So it is a finely balanced, difficult decision for you, and I don't think any of us want to make a decision that feels uncomfortable from a safety perspective. But equally, the investment there is significant, and members have made a decision previously that they thought that investment was an appropriate one. But now you've got new information, clearer information. It is resting with members to decide whether they feel that the balance can be struck in favour of the application or the risk outweighs that benefit. And I'm not sure that you can do anything other than come down on one side of that fence for an outline, because it's the principle, it's not the detail.
Yeah. I just follow on Councillor Mason's point in Ashborough Ward on Leeds Road. I think Donald and Andrew might remember there used to be a holiday chemical factory there, which was world famous next to ICI. Now, you see there how many units work there, the Mercedes, the garages there, and storage there. It's nothing happening there. So, what I mean, right, the health and safety, they have some concern. The officer can look into there, as Councillor Mason has said, we give the delegate power to the officer and then come back to, rather than to refuse it.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I do share many of the concerns which have been raised by Councillor Firth, and I actually lived very close to the factory, which been referred to earlier by Councillor Bellamy, and having been woken up in the middle of the night by explosions and fire brigade, massive numbers of fire engines arriving, toxic fumes and things, I do know from personal experience that these things can happen. it's about risk, it's about probability and so on. But as Councillor Firth says, I would not like to put my name to a planning permission where there was a serious accident and people were injured or killed.
Of course, we all sit here and, public protection is number one. We wouldn't want to, put our residents at unnecessary risk. However, life is all about a risk, and it's striking a balance. There is going to be no situation, regardless of which agency comes and tells us of their concerns, where we can say with 100% guarantee there is no risk in life, as is the case. We are talking about an outline planning application in principle, which as it progresses can be safeguarding all of the concerns, and I would be leaning on the side of economic benefits. As we move forward, we need to grow our district. Economic resilience is what communities are built on, and 300 jobs are a significant investment. I am not saying that this is the only factor in my decision. I am thinking this is an outline planning permission in principle, and we should move forward and grant that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to emphasise the point I was making earlier, but I will say again, I will mention the fact, because this is asking for outline permission, on the whole, once outline permission has been given, that then assumes that detailed permission will follow. And I note from the report that the word Seveso is mentioned there, which, as many members will remember, I think it's in Italy. There was a serious chemical explosion some years ago. I think the risk is too great for us to grant planning permission on this site. I hear what's said about the economic benefits, but because of the advice that we've had from the Health and Safety Executive, because members of the public will be involved, not workers who will be familiar with evacuation procedures in their premises, they will always know about that. But the public don't, on the whole. So I think on the grounds of the advice that we've had from the Health and Safety Executive, I would like to move refusal of this application.
Well, I was going to say that anyway, but I completely agree with what Councillor Pinnock said. And if you weigh up the economic benefit against the health and safety of this, if you look up at junction 27, there is actually quite a few empty units that could be used. I think the big Toys R Us one is still empty, I believe. So there is place already up there for more retail, so maybe. So I think I'll second on safety reasons. I don't think it's safe.
Yeah, thank you. I wonder why the Conservative local councillors agreed with the consultation. And even if it was before, they would have had an updated copies of this. The planning committee reports are uploaded at least 10 days before the actual meeting, so the ward councillors would know of this.
Could I just say, so that we're clear before we go any further, from what the committee said, I think that your reason for refusal, which will be couched in proper planning terms when the planning officer does it, is that the risks associated with by the introduction of an increased number of people to the site, which is in close proximity to the hazardous installation, is a material consideration which outweighs the overall benefits of the development as a whole. Thank you.
Just to clear one thing up, the 7 or 8 page letter, Donald, that you brought in with yesterday. Yes, so did I. Yeah. Right, this has been moved by Councillor Pinnock for refusal. It's been seconded by Councillor Bellamy and, well, thirded by Councillor Firth as well. So we're going to take a vote. All those in favour of refusal, please show. Those against? It's carried that we refuse this application. We now move on to page 35. We went there this morning. If you remember, there's 3 applications on the same site. So what Mr Wordsworth is going to do is speak to all 3 applications in one go. And then we'll have to go into closed session for a viability study to be scrutinised. So let's crack on.
Thank you, Chair. This presentation will summarise all 3 planning applications on the agenda relating to the former St Luke's Hospital site. That's items 12 to 14. The decisions will be taken separately, as Chair has just alluded to. The applicants are Pennine Property Partnership and Avent Homes on behalf of Huddersfield and Calderdale NHS Trust. This is a large site, approximately 9 hectares in size, located off to the south of Blackmoorfoot Road at Crossland Moor. The hospital closed in 2011 and the buildings were demolished last year. This site is unallocated in the UDP. It's a mixed-use allocation in the local plan that is soon to be adopted. The 3 applications are linked together to deal comprehensively with this site. Members will be aware that an outline planning permission exists on this site for a mixed-use development, granted in 2017, I believe, under a 2016 reference number. The development consisted of 187 dwellings, which was a condition, an open space and associated infrastructure, 5,388 square metres of retail, neighbourhood uses, restaurant, public house, and petrol filling station. And the plan you can see, you cannot see, is an indicative plan of how the development could have looked. Thank you. This was one of a number of plan applications that have not been delivered on the site. The site is on the Council's list of stall sites, which the Council's brokerage team are working towards delivery on. In August 2018, a pre-application was brought to Strategic Committee seeking an opinion on a revised layout and a reduction in the Section 106 contributions as a result of an updated viability assessment. Members requested, when the viability assessments come in, to bring it back to Strategic Committee. I'll just pick out basic things on this indicative plan. And where the cursor is now, that's the residential area on the indicative plan. There is the proposed access road off Blackmoorfoot Road, and that would have served the commercial element, and this access on Nabcroft Road would have served the whole residential area. These are the retail units and petrol filling station, car park, and I think public house down in this area here. The applications were submitted in October, and supporting statements including geotechnical and geo-environmental site investigation, drainage strategy, flood risk assessment, transport assessment, tree survey, noise assessment, planning statement, design and access statement, and community engagement statement. The three applications on the agenda are: item 12 seeks consent to vary and remove conditions on the existing outline permission in relation to affordable housing, highway matters and the number of dwellings to be approved on the site. The slide you can see is for the full application, which is to erect 26 dwellings on the western portion of the site. This is to be accessed off the same junction onto Blackmorefoot Road, as is proposed with the other applications. Here are some sections of the site on the full application. It replaces a significant amount of commercial development that was shown on the indicative plan under the 2014 and 2016 consents. Item 14 is a reserved matters application for up to 200 dwellings. This provides details of appearance and landscaping, layout and scale in relation to the 200 dwellings. The key changes of this proposal, I'll talk about the group as a group of applications, to the existing consent dealt with under the first item for variation of conditions are: a reduction in the amount of commercial floor space proposed. The previous outline consent included limits up to 5,388 square metres of gross retail floor space and 900 square metres of public house and restaurant use. The scheme proposes a significantly smaller commercial area. As you can see here, that is the area that would be left for a commercial type application by another applicant. There is also a proposed change to the vehicular access arrangements with a single vehicular access off Blackmorefoot Road without a residential access that was previously shown on to Nabcroft on the previous consent. The residential element of up to... start that again, Chair. Now, in terms of affordable housing and infrastructure delivery, this is severely affected by viability, and we have the Council's independent viability consultant from RLB, John Barber, here to assist should members want to discuss issues of viability in a private session. The changes to the Section 106 package are included in the application to vary conditions under item 12. Paragraphs 9.3 to 9.11 of the report give the detail. A full policy compliant when Section 106 rendered the site unviable, but we will go on to discuss that. The applicants have proposed a pot amounting to £187,000, and that will be discussed within the private session. It is on that basis that the recommendation is made. The applicant also seeks to remove condition 31 that required 5% of residential floor space to be affordable units. It also seeks to vary condition 28, which increases the limit of the number of houses from 187 to 200. Members should note that item 13 on the agenda proposes 26 dwellings on another part of the site, so the total on the whole site will be 226. I'll now pass over to Steve Sampson in Highways to summarise the changes to Highways proposed.
Through you, Chair, Steve Sampson, Highways Development Management. To summarise the Highways section of the report, in terms of forecast traffic generation from the proposed development compared with the 2014-16 planning consent, there would be a decrease of circa 90 trips in the weekday AM peak, 290 trips in the PM peak, and within the Saturday peak between 11 and 12, there's a forecast reduction of 450 trips. The proposed access arrangement would be reduced in number and nature. The approved Nabcroft Lane access would be removed, and the whole development site would be served from Blackmoorfoot Road via a priority junction. To manage any material increase from additional new development traffic within the wider area, the junction is designed and would be constructed to accommodate traffic signals and pedestrian crossing facilities at a later date. The signalised junction would then form part of a strategic package of measures to manage transportation demands along the Blackmoorfoot Road corridor and associated junctions. With respect to the cumulative impacts of approved developments and the current planning application at the Black Cat site, BWB, the applicant's highways consultant, have carried out analysis of the main junctions and links within the area. Output data indicates the operation of Blackmoorfoot Road, Park Road and Park Road West signalised junction is and will continue to operate over capacity without mitigation. As such, a scheme to improve the junction's operational efficiency would be provided by the developer and secured by condition. In terms of the highways conditions to be varied, Condition 28 relates to amending the number of dwellings permitted from 187 to 200. Highways DM considers that the reduction in scale of the retail element of the proposal and the lower forecast trip generation justifies the proposed variation of Condition 28. Condition 33, to which there are 4 parts, relate to the relocation of a bus shelter on the frontage of Blackmoorfoot Road. Highways DM consider that due to the proposed reconfiguration of the access, the relocation of a bus shelter is not required. Condition B, or Subcondition B, relates to the works on Blackmoorfoot Road, Park Road West to improve its efficiency. This is the signalised junction. This part of the condition would remain unchanged. Subcondition C relates to providing a puffing crossing on Manchester Road adjacent to the junction with Park Road West. The proposal is to remove this part of the condition. Highways DM considers that due to the reduction in the scale of the retail element of the proposal and the lower forecast trip generation justifies the removal of subcondition C. Subcondition D relates to works to replace the zebra crossing with a central island on Blackmoorfoot Road. Highways DM considers this part of the condition should remain as evidence indicates that the development proposal will add to the frequency of traffic queuing back over the existing zebra crossing. Condition 34 relates to varying the wording of a condition to provide a priority junction instead of a signalised junction. Highways DM considers that this condition can be varied. A revised scheme for the site layout access has been submitted, which is considered acceptable from a highways point of view. As I mentioned before, the access would be a priority junction with the layout and construction being designed to accommodate signals with pedestrian facilities at a later date, when required, with funding being achieved by other development contributions. Within the report, it states that given that the Lockwood Bar Junction has funding, Highways DM recommends that the contribution of £22,340 is allocated towards the site signal equipment. Both layouts would require the removal of a section of on-street parking opposite the site access. This will be relocated within the retail element of the site. And finally, condition 35 relates to the improvement to the Nabcroft Lane junction with Blackmore Foot Road. The proposal is to delete this condition. However, Highways DM considers that the condition 35 should remain, given that observed and submitted evidence indicates that development traffic will increase turning movements at the Nabcroft Lane Blackmore Foot Road junction. Thank you, Chair.
Just to finish off, thank you, Steve. So this is the full application. You can see where the cursor is for 26 dwellings that share the same access. With regards to the reserved matters application, this is the grey area there for 200 dwellings, where appearance, landscaping, layout and scale are pursuant to the existing outline permission. On the issue of trees, just bring to members' attention, so it was mentioned on the bus this morning, I'll come to a plan in a minute. Officers have overlain the tree preservation orders, overlaid that to the layout, so members can see that there is a potential conflict with the number of protected trees within the centre of the site that would be removed by this layout, and also the access road. There is a line of trees there that would be removed. There are other trees around the site, around the fringes, that would be protected, and the layout would not affect them. Tree officers have raised concerns about this, but the officers consider that this would weigh in the planning balance, and because of viability there is a need to increase the number of houses here. But we can discuss that later. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Speaker is Mark Johnson.
Chair, if you don't mind, we've actually got some speakers also with respect to the section 73. We're here on behalf of the landowners. Tom, on behalf of the original application, in effect, if that's okay. So if there's any questions to do with viability, then it will be this team sat behind me who'd answer any questions. So I'm more than happy to split the 6 minutes if that's okay.
What we're going to have to do is, if we do need to discuss viability,
So we can
we'll be a closed session.
So, yeah.
So how many speakers have you actually got?
It's a good question, Chair. There's Tom, yeah. So, Tom Allen on behalf of Henry Big Developments, 50% and 10 property partnership. Myself, Mark Johnson, on behalf of the Van Firms, and if I need to ask any technical questions of Mr. Derek to my left, then we'll do it in that fashion. That's only a little question rather than speakers, Chair.
Right. Usually it's 3 minutes per agenda item, because we've combined the three into one. I'll give you up to a total of 9 minutes.
That's it, Chair, we're only needing 9 minutes.
Right.
Hopefully the three. Okay.
Yeah.
So, that should be okay. Okay. I'm relatively loud. Okay, so just to introduce myself, I'm Tom Weldon. I'm a regional manager at Henry Boot Developments. We're 50% of the Pennine Property Partnership, which is our joint venture with Kirklees and Calderdale's NHS Trust. And so this is a site that we've been dealing with for a number of years. Specifically today, as a colleague rightly said, we're talking about the viability in the Section 73 application, so I'll try and keep it to that. But All I wanted to really cover was we've been working on the site for a number of years. As stated previously, there's a much larger retail scheme we were promoting a number of years ago. Obviously, that was no longer deliverable when the supermarkets pulled out of the sector. We've then been working quite vigorously to try and get the site brought forward for development. Obviously, moving the scheme, which was retail-led, and shifting it to being residential-led, has created a number of issues, particularly around the viability, as the topography and the brownfield nature of this site makes it particularly difficult to create the plateaus that are relevant, but also to deal with the contamination within the ground, which is another item which has subsequently come up through the due diligence of Avant and through our own due diligence, which has made the scheme more difficult to deliver from a viability perspective. As a partnership, we've had 2 aborted sales up to this point of reaching Avant, and the reality is the house builders, because it is a complex site and does have its difficulties, where there's a greenfield site that's easy to come forward, they tend to favour those and move on. So I think, again, because of the brownfield nature of the site, because of the regeneration, we're really pleased to be in this position where we can come forward with this revised viability and with a house builder alongside us to actually see some development happen on this site and to see it come forward. I think the presence of the asbestos was in the grounds. We can touch on that later, but that's been a major cost which has come forward through our due diligence. I think, just to conclude, I won't keep much longer, but we've worked really hard to try and get to this total pot number of 187, and the reality is it costs the trust, the NHS, quite a lot of money to hold this site. We have travellers coming on board, there's antisocial behaviour, these ongoing holding costs and our involvement and the numerous schemes we're going through. We've reached a point now where actually we're looking to reduce our return, and the land value is taking an impact to make it happen. We've tried to put forward a viability which still provides as much as we can back into it, but I think it's just that recognition that this is a very difficult site, it's a very difficult scheme. We're looking to bring something forward. We have had the abortive sales. We feel now we're in a position where we've got a clear route forward, but obviously it's depending on today and how things progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Mark Johnson Mount, a house builder. What Tom's just said is in effect good news, because what we can say now, as me on behalf of Avant Homes are now here waiting for your positive decision, members, and on the basis of a positive decision they are in a position to make a pretty much almost immediate start on site. So what you will get from a positive decision after waiting many years with a derelict site is a house builder building houses this summer. With respect to why there are 2 planning applications, and clearly there's a long history to the site, there's an existing outline, it had a cap of 200 in it. As a result of the cap in the permission for 200 previously, we've come along, we've looked at the land area, we've increased the land area because there's a little bit of land left behind in the old application, which is now being taken into to work with as additional green space, and the trees in that additional area will be retained. So, yes, it's a little unfortunate that we've got 2 applications on the table, one for 200 and one for 26, but ultimately your decision today is to combine those 2 permissions together, and this would work as one scheme. What I can say is that we've got some people in the room that are available to answer any technical questions that you've got, but other than that, we are supportive of the officers' reports. Chair.
Through you, Chair, it struck me that the removal of slabs of concrete platforms was an abnormal cost, and I'm just curious to know why that is true in this case, because there are plenty of sites that are developed that have got concrete slabs on them. Why does that, and that's not treated as an abnormal cost? Why does that happen in this case?
Yes, I can respond to that. Yes, it is
regarded as an abnormal cost if you have to export that material off-site. I mean, what developers will try and do, as far as they're able, is obviously to crush that concrete and reuse it on site wherever they can, as backfill, fill under roads or whatever. Where they can't do that often is where there's some contamination in the actual concrete itself. If it's been an old garage or something like that and it's got petrol and other things, other substances in it, then you find that very difficult to reuse that on site. So, and here, the site appears large enough to be able to reuse that material, but it depends on the condition of that material and whether or not it's contaminated. So they can, because obviously residential use is a sensitive use in terms of risk to health with gardens, etc.
Right, we'll make a start. Just remind members that, yeah, we have spent some time looking at these financial figures. We're now back on camera, so please do not mention any financial figures. It's just as a reminder. Right, who wants to start? No one gone home? No? Ah, right. Come on, Andrew, you usually start. Are you contemplating?
I will say this, get it out of the way, and the developers probably won't like it, but obviously we've been looking at 15% profit, which won't surprise you, and because that gives us a better return in terms of the Section 106 pot. Clearly, we've got to balance the wish to develop the site, which is quite important because it's been hanging around for quite a while, with providing some social return for the area where the development's taking place. And I'm not sure that the developers would accept 15%. So we've probably got to compromise on that somewhere between. Well, I mean, I also don't see why 20% has got to be the norm that we kind of work to, because that does seem like quite a lot. I mean, I'm saying things that you've probably heard hundreds of times before, but you understand our position. We've got to find a way of making the development happen with ensuring that we get some social return and also that the developer gets some profit out of it. Profit is actually quite important. You can't do a development with no profit or a loss even. that doesn't work. So perhaps I'm putting a negotiating position, but clearly we would like to have as profit at the lower end, but if we can compromise on somewhere in the middle, then I'll let our colleagues, since I was given a push.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, from the developer, how committed you are to actually having that retail part on the development site, because noting on what other retail sort of places they are in the area and how quick they change hands, I'm just wondering if maybe you thought of doing something else with that section of land rather than actually retail, whether that be more houses or something.
I'd like to support Councillor Bellamy in relation to the retail units, whether we could actually look into further developing it as a residential.
Under discussion 5 or 10 minutes ago, I think we have decided, as councillors, which we all represent varying wards within Kirklees, that it's time that more and more affordable housing was built. Over the last 10 years, we've been kidded along by varying contractors, house builders, who sign up to affordable housing, and then when it comes down to the pass, when the plans have been granted, they come with cap in hand, then we can't afford any affordable housing. Now the whole thing is, affordable housing is for young people just getting married, just on the ladder of owning their own home, or hopefully owning their own home, either renting or buying, but at a price they can afford. I was fortunate when I bought my house because I could afford to buy it because they weren't all that expensive anyway. I would hate to think I were having to buy one today from scratch. I'd be paying for it forever and ever, amen. And the bottom line is, if we're going to build houses, let's build the houses that people want. And the people that want the houses are the young people, either for renting or for buying. I think we've got to get down as a council with local builders and contractors to decide on a way forward, because it's no good agreeing to all these plans and then suddenly come back the builder and says, I'm sorry, but we can't afford to do what we said we'd do. This has happened so many times, and we buckle and fall under the spell, and that's it. You've got houses built that nobody can afford. Well, young people can't afford to live in, and they can't afford to rent them either. Up where I live, cottages of 150, 200 years old, they want to between £800 and £900 a month rent. Come on, you know. At one time, they used to be £10 a week, you know. And I'm going back a while. But no, seriously, we need to look into looking after the young people who can only afford a certain amount. They can't afford 500,000, because that's where they're going in some areas round about. $500,000's the norm. Who can afford $500,000? You know, they'll never pay for it. So this is what we've been discussing, and I think the council, our council, and all the constructors need to get together and come up with some formula that's going to be helpful to everybody. Whether there is one or not, I don't know, but I think there should be. Thank you.
Here, if this development wouldn't be here and at this side at St. Luke Hospital, which is one of the poorest area in Huddersfield, where we need some affordable houses or for young people who can afford it, as Donald Firth have said. If this site would have been in some other area, say, or Chalet or Kirkbarton, where we don't need much affordable houses, but we need everywhere, that would have been acceptable. But here, I don't know how we can justify to our local people not to have any affordable or cheap rent proper houses there. So that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to see as much affordable housing as possible on this site. But I think given the situation we're in with this site and the fact it's being developed commercially, unfortunately, we're only going to scratch the surface of the problem. I agree with what Councillor Firth has said in terms of his analysis of the problem. We've got a massive need for affordable housing, but I think that's about the wider housing strategy, and I think it does need some quite different models of housing development than the one that we're looking at here, really. So it's making the best of a bad job, really, in this kind of situation. I do, though, appreciate that this is a site that has it's laid fallow for quite a number of years, and it is a site that we need to start construction on. As an authority, as the local plan is passed, we will be under pressure to deliver a certain number of houses each year, and if we do not deliver those houses, we're going to have problems. So I think it's a matter now of negotiating the best possible deal that we've got within this situation, and hopefully we can actually start construction on this site as soon as possible.
Thank you, Chair. Can I propose that we defer this for negotiation to see if, as Councillor Mather and Councillor Bellamy have said, the other part of the site, which at the moment has got business on it, if that were turned into housing, whether that makes the viability position really significantly different. I'm sorry, I'm not putting that very well, but that's the object of the proposal for deferring it.
Hi, thank you. There's a it's okay. There's a few points there, and I'll try and pick those up in turn, just to hopefully clarify a few things. With regards to profit and the return, especially on the residential element, obviously the profit reflects the risk involved in undertaking the works and the expenditure that we put forward. Within this partnership, 50% of the profit goes back to the NHS. So you talk about social gain and social benefit. The profit from this is going back to the NHS, who are actually incurring significant costs holding this asset, and this is why we're so determined to try and bring it forward. On the retail element, our profit would be lower at 15%, which is commensurate of the risk and that type of development. Just on the retail, obviously the reason why that's within the scheme, this was originally a much larger retail scheme, but it's been scaled back to be at a neighbourhood level. The type of uses that we would anticipate within there would be the pub type use, the ancillary retail, and it was because we felt within the area it was important to have some element of jobs and employment, and really it followed back from there to have that ancillary element. And then again, moving on the affordable housing point, the nature of this scheme, it is in a low value area, and that means that you've got your build costs, you've got a difficult site, difficult abnormals, and you try and work it all through as to how we can unlock it. The reality is, because the values are quite low in the area, the actual house prices are lower than what you'd get in another house anyway. So relatively compared to the market, a lot of the housing, especially the lower element, is relatively affordable. But understand the pressures. I think ultimately from our end, we just wanted to be in a position where we can take this site forward, see some development. And the 106 we have on our table is almost, it's the best we could get to. It's not, we haven't tried to come here before you as some kind of negotiating tool. We've tried to find a position where we can feel we can go away with Vance and strike a commercial deal to see development happen. But actually, it kind of is what it is.
What colleagues say about that?
Just to clarify your response, are you saying that you don't see any mileage in going away and thinking about replacing the retail with further houses, or is that something that you would consider, and would it make a difference?
My concern would be it wouldn't create pro-rated additional 106 to be able to come back in, because actually the difficulty we've had when we had the commercial scheme, the way you deal with the abnormals, you don't need to deal with the asbestos. You can put a big capping layer over it. It's a big single plateau. You're not having all the retaining walls. You're not dealing with all those elements. You're not having to bring inert in because people are wanting to plant plants in their gardens and they need to make sure that they're not going to cause them any issue. So as soon as the scheme shifted from what it was previously, and the previous 106 and the previous was being supported by the supermarket, so the supermarket was really paying for everything. When we took that away and put forward this scheme, the residential actually generates less into the pot than what the supermarket scheme did, which is the supermarket was subsidising it. And actually you put more in there because of the way the levels work, particularly in that area, and the plateau that would have to be created. From an engineering perspective, it doesn't actually generate a huge amount of additional cash to go back into the pot. So my concern would be, we go away, we do a lot of additional work, but this scheme doesn't come forward in 3 months, 6 months, it's 12 months longer.
So am I hearing that you're saying it wouldn't make any difference whether we substituted the retail for housing because it wouldn't add too much to the pot in relation to negotiating the percentage of profit by the developer?
That's correct.
So if we then say on that basis we may consider refusal, is that still the best position that you can come up with?
Can I just say something? Just with respect to the profit, Tom's already mentioned the 15% on the commercial element, which is, relatively modest for a commercial scheme. On the residential, the recent release planning practice guidance does recommend between 15% and 20%. Now, it's unreasonable to assume that every site would fall within that range. As Tom mentioned, profit is meant to reflect risk. This is a significant brownfield site. Whilst the Fulham Hospital building has been demolished, there is still a lot of underground structures which remain, a lot of uncertainty surround that. Asbestos is present, not only in the existing substructure but across the site, which means a significant amount of work to remove contaminated material off-site. So the reality is, in my professional view, we should be at the upper end, if not higher than 20%. I think, but what we've done is we have made concessions on the profit. Working with the council's advisor, we've modelled the residential level profit at around 17.2%. So it's kind of in the middle of where planning practice guidance is recommending. I think, I don't think we can move any further on that. As one of the gentlemen opposite mentioned, I don't think any developer would proceed with his site at 15% due to the level of risk. I think 17.2, I think is where we are, is best we can get on this site.
Right, I want to stop it here. We're not negotiating here today. So I want Matthias to come in, and then we have had it moved by Councillor Pinnock, seconded by Councillor Bellamy to defer at this moment in time, because we're really not going to be a negotiating committee on something like this. Oh, Matthias.
Thanks. Okay. So we've had a good discussion about it. We've heard some extra feedback which has been useful from the developer. It's quite clear members aren't comfortable with the profit levels as they currently exist, but the developers made some clear points around where they feel they can get to. So we will take that away and we'll see if there's any further discussions around that. We will pick up the question about whether the retail element could be replaced with housing, and we can do an exercise to look at that because we know enough about the site in terms of the phase 2 that we've got. We will see what that comes back with. I'm not saying that we will come back with anything different to the next committee, but I recognise that members have concerns with where they are at the minute, and the developer has heard potentially that's not an acceptable position. But let's see what we can do between now and the next committee cycle with those two key areas, and I'll see what we can negotiate and where we come to with a recommendation again. Is that all right, Chair? We'll take it on those 2 points. Thank you.
Deferring all three applications, yeah.
Just for cameras. So we're going to do item agenda 12, 13 and 14, which are all St Luke's. So I'll go through it again. Councillor Andrew Pinnock has moved deferment. It has been seconded by Councillor Bellamy. All those in favour of deferment, please show. 7-0. Thank you very much.
Sorry, it's deferred till the next committee.
Next, page 89, agenda item 15. This is the St Helens Gate, Almonbury. This is the school field that we went to look at this morning. Nick.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks the formation of a 3G sports pitch within the grounds of King James's School, Almonbury. This would allow all-weather usage. It would be surrounded by a 4-metre-high rebound fence. The site is within the Greenbelt. Also, the site is within a conservation area, with the neighbouring number 28 being Grade 2 listed, with 28 being as noted there. Within the local plan, an assessment was undertaken on the quality and available of sport pitches across the district. The document identified a need to enhance sport facilities at King James School, in addition to the school's own desires to improve their facilities. This application would assist in achieving these aims. I will just mention, members saw on site today the area that is currently surfaced. The area to be developed is smaller than that, and as can be seen on the plans there. This shows the approximate distance between the site with the woodland on the left and then number 28 there on the right. That was the Grade 2 listed building. First, considering the Greenbelt implications, outdoor facilities are acceptable within the Greenbelt, subject to development preserving openness. The change of the pitch from a hard surface to 3G will not impact openness. The fencing is 4 metres in height. However, it would be a green mesh, limiting its visibility. It would also be set against the backdrop of the woodland and the larger buildings of the school. Therefore, officers do not consider the proposal harmful to openness or the Greenbelt. Regarding heritage, while within the conservation area, the site is removed from the historic core of Almonbury Centre. The proposal represents a feature typical of modern schools and, as previously considered, would have a minimal prominence in the landscape. Regarding the listed number 28, with the separating road, boundary wall and distance of approximately in excess of 25 metres, they would be visually separate and the development would not impact upon the listed building setting. As such, there are no heritage-related concerns. Amenity and noise pollution have been considered through this application, and the proposed fencing does have the potential to create noise through ball strike. Likewise, raised voices and shouting are associated with sports pitches. The site is close to several dwellings, with the closest being the aforementioned number 28. To mitigate concerns and the impact, the following conditions have been discussed and proposed with the school. Limit the use to students, defined as those as 16 or under. The times of use are to be 8:55 until 6, Monday till Friday, and 9 till 5, Saturday, within term time only. There is to be no flood lighting, secured by condition, and an acoustic barrier is to be provided within the inside of the proposed fencing. With these conditions, officers conclude the proposal to be acceptable regarding amenity. Following amendments, the application was re-advertised. The second public representation period expires today, the 15th of February. The committee report contains representations received up to the date of publishing. The update includes representation received up until yesterday. Officers do recommend approval of the application, subject to delegation back to officers to wait the end of the public representation period today. Should any new material planning considerations be raised, the application will be brought back before members. I have nothing further to add, Chair. I will just mention, however, Councillor Judith Hughes attended this morning and gave us a letter. She can't be here now, so she's asked for me to read it out. Is that good, Chair? Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I would like to object based on the area being in the Greenbelt/conservation area. The green fencing is obtrusive, and I get many complaints about green fencing in areas that are not actually in the Greenbelt or a conservation area, as they are seen as an eyesore. This fencing will impede the lovely views and be a permanent feature in the Greenbelt. The report states it has been lowered and will only be 4 metres in height. That is still the height of 2 tall men. Planning policy is to preserve the openness of the Greenbelt. This fence does not preserve that openness. The report also states that due to the surface being an all-weather pitch, there will be more use of the pitch, will result in more noise for the residents. Why hasn't a noise report been asked for by the planning? Why hasn't a noise report been asked for by planning? The report also states that a condition will be used to achieve acoustic fencing/walling along the site boundary. What is this and what does it look like? Who is going to monitor the site to limit use to under 16s in the school? Who will monitor whether or not the school will be rented out, whether the school will rent it out for use by other groups, etc. There is another school within Almonbury that has a lot of land surrounding it that is not in the conservation area. Would it not be an idea to ask the schools to work together, produce a playing area that both schools could use along with the community? This would also help to bring all the children together and help with cohesion in the area. There is already a council-run sports centre on this site that is struggling with budget cuts. The report states that ward members were not alerted to this application at the beginning. Why was this when it was a contentious application? This application was brought to my attention by the residents. I have been following this application and asked for an update over time. I was told that it would go to strategic planning in March, and I informed residents. I then got an email to say it had been brought forward to this meeting in February, even though the consultation period with the public does not end until after the meeting. I find the way in which this application has been dealt with as rather strange, and it does not fill me with confidence in the planning process. The end.
We have one speaker, and that's Rachel.
Yes. I live at number 28 Arkenny Lane, and it's just so close to our house. First of all, it's a conservation area, and I don't know who went today on the site visit, but it's actually set higher than the road level. So the 4 metres is going to be higher than 4 metres because you're looking up already at the pitch. And the noise, it's just going to be so noisy. They've said it's going to be for under 16s, but there's whistles, there's spectators. On Saturdays, will there be any toilet facilities? Parking, it's such an issue already with the use that I sometimes think an emergency vehicle couldn't get through. Sometimes I can't get out of my drive and I've got 3 young children, so potentially I can't leave them sat in a car while I try and find out who's parked where. And obviously I know it's not just about me, but there's other residents on the street. Someone new's just moved in up the road who I mentioned this to, and she didn't know anything about it. And then is it going to be locked? Who's going to be responsible for locking it? What happens if someone forgets? Will other people use it? Could the lights be added at a later date? Sorry, I'm rambling now. Look at my points. And also the noise impact survey, there's not been one, and obviously I don't understand why haven't they done one. Is it, could that be maybe something that could be done to see how noisy, it would be with all the ball strike? And they've said they'll put like a noise barrier into the fence, but obviously they're saying that the fencing isn't going to stand out. But what about the noise barrier? What does that look like? Is that green? Will it, it can't be invisible, can it, if it's going to be a barrier? There's so many what if sort of thing that we don't know the answer to. I think that's about everything. Thank you.
you're saying, but my reading, I didn't go on the visit this morning, my reading is this, that it's going to be within the existing playground. And I can tell you barriers, as far as I know, where it's close to residential areas, is usually a glass wall, isn't it? Am I correct in saying that? I'm looking at our planning. Okay. And in terms of it being toilet facilities, car parking, if it's on the existing site, the school has car parking, the school will have facilities to go to the toilet, and but they can, I know, facilities are opened up. We're making schools at the heart of our communities. So I think this is what my reading is, but I'll wait for my my colleagues who actually did the site visit.
Yeah, with this application, the actual provision of all-weather pitches, I think, is really important. In fact, I would like to see it being used as much as possible. So things like during the school holidays, I think if we're providing these pitches, which are expensive, we should make full use of them. My main concern about this, in terms of the process, I have some sympathy with the sentiments expressed by Councillor Hughes in terms of the time, the fact that comments from local people are still coming in today, the fact that local ward members were not aware of the fact this was coming to the meeting until such a point where they'd already made other arrangements. And I wonder if it should be deferred to allow more people, including ward councillors, to come to the meeting to speak to this. Which is interesting, because I probably disagree with the things that they've said so far in terms of objecting to this. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in a bit of agreement, and I'm glad that there's no floodlights, because I think that would have been absolutely awful, to be honest, and certainly for any residents nearby. But I am in agreement that I think actually probably should be used a little bit more in the school holidays and maybe opened up. And schools are what is probably one of the largest buildings in most areas, and they should be used by the whole community and become more of a community centre. I am interested though to know, because I know it has mentioned acoustic fencing, obviously, which it should dampen the noise, but what would the acoustic fencing actually look like? So I would be interested to know that.
Thank you, Chair. I assume that this site plan and this proposed play area is what we would term, would we term them as muggers? Multi-use? Is it one of those? Like a lot of schools we've provided, right. And they have a fence around them. They have to be fenced off because obviously if they weren't, everybody would be playing in them. They have certain opening times and certain closing times. The problems are the people who have written in objection. How many objections have we had, Neil?
Through Chair, in total 7, but that does include some doubles from residents.
Are they all the same problem? Is the colour of the fence wrong or what?
The concerns that have been raised are the amenity, flood lighting, sound.
Because, you know, I find that with television transmitters, etc., they never paint them green because they always show up. They paint them silver, and that weathers, and after a while you never notice it from a fencing and a you know, a transmitting point of view. They never paint them green. Just to remember that. But I'm a believer if there's only 7 being in. I knew nothing about this till this morning. We just landed. That was it. So I think we ought to have a little bit more time to look at it, discuss it, see it, and I think we should see how many other people are either for or against, personally. I don't know. And the tree line round here, are these trees just put in there, or are they, I never thought to look this morning, they're not there anymore, they're going to be planted, these, I assume, round the mugger. Because it's up to the road, it's up to Arkenley Lane, and you can see where they were going to be, so obviously the trees aren't there now. Are they all small? Oh, well, what's the problem? It's surrounded by trees. Right, we need to plant some more.
Thank you, Chair. That was one of the points I was going to mention. And thank you, Councillor, for mentioning the colour of the fence. But as the objector has mentioned, this acoustic fence, not the fence itself, but I mean, what does that look like? I can understand her point about it being too prominent, and I also think that were we to give this permission, there would need to be quite a serious condition about improving the tree cover between this site and Arkenley Lane. All right, in the winter it doesn't look very much, but the better that can be to provide a barrier in itself, both acoustic and otherwise, is absolutely vital, it seems to me. And it doesn't have to be right up to the wall, because I mean, I don't think you should do that anyway, because it then gets too close to the houses on the other side of the road. But some kind of improved tree planting as well as that. I mean, I'm generally speaking, I'm in support of this, but like everything else, we need to get it right. And everybody who's got a legitimate point about it needs to have that point heard, which is partly what we're doing at the moment. But maybe if we need to defer it to make sure we've got everything in relation to that, then I would go along with that. But I don't think anybody's seconded the proposal yet. I won't yet, but no, they haven't, and I'm not doing that yet. I'm waiting to hear what other people have to say.
So I was going to start off with where Councillor Pennock left off about if we're minding to defer it. If we are minding to defer it, maybe we could also check what Councillor Hughes is saying about two schools joining up the facility, although that's not at issue, that's not the planning application before us. In relation to the consultation period, if it was ending today, maybe the decision could be deferred to tomorrow, because I just can't see what it would achieve if it was going to, the consultation period was going to end at 5 o'clock or whatever time it was going to end. So those are my points.
For this item, because most of the objection we received on this report before the amended plans, I think, negotiated by the school. So I would like to give me another chance to a local resident to come back.
Sorry, thank you, members. Thank you for your comments. I'll just come back on a few things there. If I do forget anything, please let me know. In terms of the barrier, the acoustic barrier, in short, yes, it would be a solid screen. It wouldn't be mesh similar to what we got at the moment. It wouldn't be tall, though. We'd be looking at between 1 and 1.5 metres to stop, given the separation distance from the actual pitch, the rolling of it. If members think a colour would be appropriate, potentially we can look at that. From the outside, though, it would just be similar to a fence or something. On the inside, it might be a little bit different to accommodate the acoustic features. But from the rear, it would be the mesh and then a much smaller barrier and then the pitch. Just in relation to when Councillor Hughes was notified approximately 3 weeks ago, I informed her that it was going to come to committee with the current intention, subject to discussions with the Chair, to go to the next committee. However, having spoken to Chair, I was informed it was able to attend this one, and she was informed that 2 weeks ago. And we can condition it to be green, which can be monitored by planning enforcement if you'd like. Given that this won't be televised or anything like that, they might not look for it. I doubt they'd look for it to be silver. Was there any other points raised by members that you'd like to go? Apologies, yes. The recommendation I'm making to you now is to delegate it back to us to await the ending of today. If any more representations are received that raise new issues, so if we get anything retreading old ground, no, but if any new significant issues are raised, we will bring it back to you. Regarding landscaping, if members would like to see a condition along that lines, we can look into that and impose that.
Yeah, that was my point. I was just wondering if we're going to defer it, if we could look at further planting more trees, etc. And I'm quite happy to defer it till the end of the consultation, but I'm not coming back tomorrow to discuss this. You know, it will be. I think it needs to be next meeting.
It's been put forward for deferral for need to look at colour, need to look at the fence, a condition of more trees, which definitely does want looking at because a lot of them they look dead to me. Make sure that all information is in from the people that live round about, which is only fair. So that's being moved by Councillor Walker, seconded by Councillor Sokol for deferral. Those in favour of deferral, please show. 7-0. Hey. Next.
Till the next till the next meeting.
Next we go to page 89, and this is, if you remember this, we did pay a site visit to it last year. This is at Bolstermoor, and it's Francis Davis.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Francis Davis and I'm the planning officer for this application. This application has been brought to committee as the area relates to a non-residential development of a site area greater than 5 hectares. This is a returning application, having previously been granted 12 months temporary planning permission under a 2017 application for the change of use to a mixed-use brewery with on-site public tasting room. Specifically, the application relates to Unit 15 of Heath House Mill, a complex of subdivided units hosting a variety of uses. Access to the site is taken via an adopted track off Slades Road in Golka and benefits from a shared access parking area. So that's just the site there. It needs to be flipped around. Yeah. Officers in their assessment consulted with Kirklees Environmental Health and Highway Services, who advised they have not received any complaints during the 12-month temporary permission. Furthermore, it is advised that the application has not attracted any objections. The application is therefore been assessed by planning officers as not materially harming residential amenity. In respect of operating hours, the existing restrictions of 11 p.m. for function events and a maximum number of patrons of 150 and opening hours for the brewery of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Is considered acceptable. Following assessment of all available information, officers believe the scheme would not have a detrimental effect on visual or residential amenity and is recommended for approval. Nothing further to add, Chair.
We've got no speakers. Donna?
Thank you, Chair. Well, as a ward member, we've had no complaints whatsoever about this since it got its 12 months temporary. So I'm completely happy to move officer's recommendation, to be honest. And the guy actually owes me a pint.
Yeah, Chair. When the planning permission was given on this application about 12 months ago, I was on the committee. We mostly agreed to go after some sort of debate. I think, as Donna has said, we haven't got any complaint or any from highways or other things. So I think we should go along. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, as another ward member where this business is situated, I agree that there have been no complaints and seems to be a well-run and successful local business. So I would support the application.
Right, it's been moved by Councillor Bellamy, seconded by Councillor Sokol. All those in favour, please show. 7-0 again. That is it for today. Thank God.